Cram?
Here.
Peterson?
Here.
Schwartz?
Here.
Miller?
Here.
Bulow?
Here.
Canuck?
Here.
Rudis?
Here. And then our land acknowledgement.
We are gathered here on the lands that were originally home to the Menominee and Ho-Chunk nations. We honor the Menominee and Ho-Chunk communities and are grateful for their stewardship of the land and waters. We acknowledge these ancestral grounds as sacred and remember the complex history of settler colonialism on these lands and the effects that persist today. We commit to a restorative and healing relationship of the original inhabitants and our community.
And then our mission statement.
The mission of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is to create a more welcoming, connected, and equitable Oshkosh by consciously including the richness and complexities of marginalized voices in its planning and function.
Thank you. And then do we have a motion to approve the minutes from February 24th?
So moved.
Second. Okay. Do we have any discussion? And then, can we take the roll? Call the roll.
Cram?
Aye.
Peterson?
Aye.
Schwartz?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Bulow?
Aye.
Canuck?
Aye.
What?
No.
Oh, sorry.
All right, we have 5.
And then, do we have any, are we welcoming our new committee members next?
So we do not have anyone registered for citizen statements or public comments today.
Thank you.
So then we can welcome our new committee members. All right. So what we've historically done is let the new committee members just give a little intro, and we will all go around the room and introduce ourselves as well. I can't remember who all didn't make it last time.
I didn't.
You, both of you. Okay. So Hunter, would you like to go?
Yeah, what would you like me to say?
A little bit about yourself and why you were interested in joining our committee.
Absolutely. My name is Hunter Peterson, and I am 25 years old. I am a part of the LGBTQ community, as well as Native American. I reside right here in Oshkosh, about 2 minutes away, and I decided to join this because this is exactly where I need to be. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Chanel?
Hi, my name is Chanel Rudis.
A little bit about yourself and why you're here.
Okay. I've been living in Oshkosh for about 7 years now, and I'm just a community leader here in Oshkosh, and I just felt like like he said, was the right place to go.
Wonderful. I'll introduce myself. We'll start with me, Michelle Banky. I'm the staff liaison for the city for this committee, and I'm also the HR manager for the city. So, you want to go to Lindy?
Hello. I'm Lindy. I'm the HR assistant, so I work with Michelle in the HR department for the city of Oshkosh. I'm also the one that makes sure you guys have agendas and know when to show up. And help with planning the speakers and just try to make sure that you guys have all the tools that you need when you get here.
I'm Amanda Cramp. I live here in Oshkosh. I have 2 kids. I'm in the Rocket Boosters at Reed Elementary for my kids. It's their PTO group. I'm also a member of the LGBTQ community. Wanted to use my loud, annoying voice for good. Thank you. I'm Liz. I've lived in Oshkosh about 7-ish, 8 years. I wanted to be a part of this partially because Carl thought that I would be good here, but I've also been working specifically with the homeless population and also victims of domestic violence, so I wanted to use my experience there to help them out.
I am Carl Bulow, your friendly neighborhood council liaison. I'm finishing my first of hopefully more terms on city council. And this was my first choice this session to be the council liaison on DEI, and I was appointed. I'm very glad. Very interested in making sure that Oshkosh is welcoming and accessible to all of our residents and all of our voices that we have. Done a lot of work in a lot of different nonprofits and focusing on helping historically marginalized communities as well.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I have lived in Oshkosh since 1991 and new board member of the Oshkosh Pride and ally to the LGBTQ community.
I'm Crystal Miller. I'm new to the committee this year. I've lived in Oshkosh since 2008, and I have mostly done work in the educational settings, first at the university and now in the school system. I have a child also in the Oshkosh Area School District, and I'm excited to be here and keep doing that work.
All right, wonderful.
And then we are reorganizing. We have a vice chair election.
Right, I will lead this one, if that's okay with everyone. So we do need to elect a vice chair. Liz is our chairperson, and unfortunately, our vice chair did leave us not too long ago. So basically, we need to elect a vice chairperson. I will call for nominations 3 times. We will then have a motion to close nominations and vote. So at this time, I call for nominations for vice chair. A second is not required, by the way, just a motion, or just a nomination.
And if you're interested, you can nominate yourself.
You are very welcome to nominate yourself.
I kind of want to nominate myself.
Okay.
Oh, excellent.
I also would like to nominate
I'd like to nominate.
I will nominate Amanda Cramp.
Yep.
You can't all nominate Amanda.
I only have so much space on my
Right.
paper.
I mean, I call a second time for nominations. Third time, any further nominations for vice chair? As there's only one candidate, I will entertain a motion to close the nominations and elect Amanda Cramp as the vice chair.
So moved.
I will need a second on this one.
Second.
Okay.
Unopposed.
Okay, so then we will call the roll.
Cram,
Aye.
Peterson,
Aye.
Schwartz, Miller,
Aye.
Bulow.
Aye.
All right. And there we go. We have a vice chair.
Long may they reign.
Should have brought a tiara.
I can go back and grab it.
All right, and then we do have Anna Canizo. Is that correct?
It's pretty close.
What is it?
It's Canizzo. So the Z's are kind of like in pizza.
Like pizza.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's what I tell people.
All right.
I'm never going to
Yeah.
forget that.
The Z's like in pizza, so it's the best way to explain it.
All right. Yeah, we have Anna from the Public Museum to give a little presentation for us. Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't have a fancy presentation. I just want to kind of report out what's going on at the museum. Before I get started, to let you all know, the Oshkosh Public Museum has been a part of the city of Oshkosh for just over 100 years. It celebrated its 100th anniversary last year, so it has a long legacy of being an important part of stewarding the cultural heritage of the community for over 100 years now, just over 100 years now. My name is Anna Canizzo, and I've been the director since June, but I've been with the Oshkosh Public Museum for just over 10 years in a variety of roles. So my background is I have a master's in anthropology with an emphasis on archaeology, as well as a certificate in museum studies from the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. So just to let you know, that's kind of the area I come from. My specialty in the museum field has been collections care and management and preservation. So I always speak very strongly from that perspective, but I'm really excited to take on this newer role with the city in leading the museum forward as it goes into its second century of service. So, and thank you all for having me here today to talk about what we've got going on. So the last time I was here presenting to this group, and I think it was made up of all different members, I and at the time the then director talked about NAGPRA quite a bit. ProPublica article had come out about all the ancestral remains that still were in the care of museums and universities across the country. So we talked a bit about the museum's stance on it, its history with it, because we do steward collections that fall under NAGPRA. So I thought I would kind of start there and give you all an update. Maybe a little bit of reverse, since this is a newer group and you might have questions about what NAGPRA is. NAGPRA stands for the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. It's a federal law that was enacted in 1990 to resolve and restore the rights of Native American lineal descendants and tribes to human remains and cultural items. Federal NAGPRA requires museums, agencies, and universities that accept federal funding to consult with Native American tribes regarding the repatriation of human remains, funerary objects, sacred objects, and objects of cultural patrimony in museum collections or discovered on federal or tribal lands after 1990. So what does NAGPRA require? NAGPRA requires museums and agencies and universities to compile detailed inventories and summaries, consult with Native American tribes, and follow a process to return human remains, funerary objects, sacred objects, and objects of cultural patrimony, that meet the requirements outlined in the law and are claimed by tribe or tribes. So that's just a little bit of a background about the law, and I won't go into the museum's history necessarily about it. I'll be open for questions. I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a basis if that's something that you are unfamiliar with. But the museum has been complying with NAGPRA since its inception in 1990 and submitting its first inventory and summary in 1995, which is actually a pretty quick turnaround. A lot of museums had to apply for extensions. The challenges with NAGPRA, and something we discussed back in 2023 when I was here last, is that it puts a lot of the burden on the Native American tribes. It's the museums, the universities, they would make their inventories, they would comply, but there wasn't as much. It would then be in the hands of the tribes to make the requests and consultations, and as a result, so much of their cultural heritage has remained in the care of a lot of these organizations. So the museum made a commitment at that time to be a little bit more proactive, to take a more aggressive stance in our activities, to go back and reanalyze all of our records and our collections, and hire a collections assistant that would be dedicated specifically to NAGPRA. And so I'm delighted that we did that. But the timing was actually perfect because there was an update on NAGPRA activities since that last meeting. So just in 2024, January of 2024, NAGPRA was revised, and it went into effect on January 12th, 2024. The aim to strengthen the role of Indigenous communities in repatriation and accelerate the process. So the roadblocks, the difficulties, it strived to remove a lot of those, and so it was perfect timing. It aligned perfectly with our commitment to do more, do better, and be more proactive. So within the revised regulations, I'll just kind of go through a bullet point list of like what that included. So it would strengthen the authority and roles of tribes and NHOs, so Native Hawaiian organizations, in the repatriation process by requiring deference to the indigenous knowledge of lineal descendants, tribes, and NHOs. So that's a big, there has been a big movement in museums to decolonize and welcome in indigenous voices or voices of source cultures across the board as they curate and interpret, display cultural heritage in a variety of ways. It required museums and federal agencies to obtain free, prior, and informed consent from lineal descendants, tribes, or NHOs before allowing any exhibition of, access to, or research on human remains or cultural items, which is another, again, we're putting the authority, the power back into the source culture's hands. I can say proudly that Oshkosh Public Museum always required consent if a researcher wanted to come in and look at collections and they were deemed sacred, or we found documentation that they were sacred. We would always have them reach out to the tribes and obtain consent before they would do any, we would proceed. So I think that was a really wonderful addition to the updated regulations. Eliminating the category of culturally unidentifiable human remains and resetting the requirements for cultural affiliation to better align the regulations with congressional intent. So that was a kind of a catch-all that culturally unidentifiable human remains would make it really difficult to repatriate them because you couldn't associate a culture with them. So much research has happened. There's been a lot of expansion because there's been more indigenous voices, their oral histories included in research. So they've been able to align. So if you had a geographic area or a time period, with the research that's happened since the inception of the law, you could say like, old copper culture definitely has an alignment, a descendant to like the Menominee Nation and so on and so forth. So that's the culturally unidentifiable human remains is hard, you can't hide underneath it any longer. Another update is increasing transparency and reporting of holdings or collections and shedding light on collections currently unreported under the existing regulation, and requiring museums and federal agencies to consult and update inventories of human remains and associated funerary objects within 5 years of this final rule. So the final deadline for all those inventories is January 2029. So the updated NAGPRA regulations also expanded the classification and definition of cultural heritage. So for example, for human remains, if it was a piece of cultural heritage that had skin or teeth or hair, those now fall under human remains where previously they did not. So collections are being reassessed. Umbilical cord amulets, for example, that are in collections, those are now considered human remains where before they were not. So those classifications have also shifted and expanded to be more inclusive of what the indigenous tribes consider human remains and their ancestors. Also included in the updated regulations is the duty of care for human remains and cultural items. So specific cultural care of a variety of collections. So some objects that require. So for example, at the museum, there are drums that we have that aren't being fed, that need to be fed. It's culturally specific. There's no one on staff that can do that. We need to be proactive when we talk about care and stewardship, is providing cultural care for these items as well, and letting these drums be fed, or if there needs to be smudgings or objects that can't be handled by female, or just having more care, culturally specific care for these types of objects. So these are all things that we are moving towards. We already do observe for what we know, but there's so much that we don't know. We have these blind spots. So again, involving tribal nations and representatives to help us care for these items as well. So like I said before, OPM hired a collections assistant for NAGPRA activities in late summer of 2024. The museum also removed or covered items on display that may fall under the updated NAGPRA regulations. So collections that, with the updated regulations that maybe we didn't know fell under or didn't kind of meet that expanded scope, or we reanalyzed the excavation records and found, oh, this was nearby this site which was known for, burial mounds or something like that. We're going to take this item off, and we're going to research it more to ensure that we are being sensitive and compliant to this law. So if you go to the museum, you'll see a few items removed. You will see the excavation covered for right now as we seek further consultation with the tribes. We recently completed a deadline to compile an itemized list of federal holdings. So anything that was collected on federal lands, that was due on January 13th, and we met that deadline. We submitted to over a dozen federal agencies. Thus far, no claims from the federal government, but there's a lot going on at the federal level, so we're just going to keep plugging away at what we've got going on. OPM is currently working on creating an itemized list for each site collected from, then items with unknown provenance, but have a geographic location. These itemized lists will then be submitted to tribes for consultation visits for human remains and funerary objects at this time. So we've prioritized human remains and associated or possibly unassociated funerary objects. Once consultation visits occur, we'll continue to update the inventory list based on the information gathered from those consultations, and then submit it to the federal government. It has to post for 30 days before claims can be reviewed. This is currently paused because there's so much happening at the federal level. So there's a bit of a pause because there is some unavailability to the Federal Register. So we don't know how long that'll occur, what will happen, but our plan is to continue our commitment to prioritize these activities and the original goals. So we are prepared when operations may resume. So we're just going to continue with the work because we know it's critical. And it's long overdue, and we are stewards of this cultural heritage, and it's really important for us to maintain that relationship. And as I've talked to many people, just do the right thing. And so we've been working really hard behind the scenes to do just that. OPM is also working on digitizing files. We are a museum, so we like old technology. So all of our records were analog. They were all paper copies, so we're digitizing them. And we'll still keep the analog copies because we're not going to get too wild there. But it's important to have that also from a risk management perspective. Later phases will concentrate on a summary of for sacred objects and cultural patrimony to submit to tribal nations. So that's kind of the next phase and priority level for when we review the collections. We've also hired an independent Indigenous consultant to come for a visit. She's coming next week. We recognize that we have a lot of blind spots within our group. We don't know everything. We're certainly not, there's no one on staff that's a member of the Indigenous community. So we're bringing in a consultant to help us look at our plan, see if it's feasible, if we're missing anything, and also start collaborating on, I'm getting tongue-tied, on duty of care, because those are things that we would not have knowledge of. I mean, we can hear about it, but it's important to bring in members of the Indigenous community to help with this work. Our collections assistant, who's currently working on the project, is also not from a tribal nation. So again, bringing in an independent Indigenous consultant is an important part, we think, of making sure we are being as comprehensive and sensitive as possible. She's also giving a presentation next week at the museum about NAGPRA and the activities that at the museum and museums in general. So that'll be next Thursday at the museum at 6 p.m. And it is free with admission. So the museum will be open a little bit later, so you can also see on the People of the Waters display some of the objects that have been removed and covered, and I'm sure she'll want to talk about some of that. So that's where I'm kind of going to leave off with NAGPRA. Before I continue, are there any questions or comments that I can, because I have a tendency to just keep on going. No?
I have a small question.
Sure.
Which you might get to, but how would somebody be able to get involved or like be able to, are there volunteering opportunities or stuff like that there?
There's volunteering opportunities at the museum for sure, but when it comes to NAGPRA collections, we're very hypersensitive to who has access.
Right.
I mean, museum staff, I've been by the human remains, I can count it on one hand in over 10 years, because we're just incredibly sensitive to who has access, when they have access, who's nearby. So we try to keep that. So when it comes to involved in that type of work, I think just, I think being supportive of these types of endeavors in the community, at, you know, whether it's the museum or you know, if we're doing particular programs, I think that's a great way to help support those efforts. We're just really protective of access. We want to be as careful as possible. Carl knows this because I didn't take you on a tour, but I took a couple of other council members on a tour, and I said, I don't want to take you back there because, you know, that's where we care for the ancestors, and I really want to respect their, you know, privacy.
You did take my partner and I.
Did I?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, well, good.
Jen got to come on it with me.
Yeah. So that's, but we do have volunteering opportunities at the museum. And again, bringing forth those types of efforts are the exhibition People of the Waters is a great exhibition, and, you know, volunteering and working with the community in that regard. So you can always reach out to our curator of education, Neil Mathern, if you are interested in participating in that way.
Do you have an official volunteer website or anything, or is it reaching out to Neil?
We go through the city process.
Okay.
So it starts at the city website for volunteer opportunities, and then it gets routed to us.
So that's how you. So
Thank
everybody's
you,
aware.
thank you.
Yes, that's what
Michelle's always looking out for me.
So
Sorry,
the city
Mr.
website has volunteer opportunities, and then you get routed appropriately.
Yeah, that's kind of a key step. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, my son got to go on a field trip to the People of the Waters exhibit. He had such a good time and he loved it. So
Wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that.
yeah, he had a really good time. He really liked learning about the effigy mounds.
Nice.
He was very into that.
Well, Wisconsin, while only a very small portion of them remain, percentage of them remain, is I think one of the largest areas that have mounds or earthworks in the country. The Midwest is very well known for them. So, yeah. Any other questions before I keep going? Well, since we were talking about People of the Waters, you know, another engagement with the Native community is we have a ongoing rotating display. So in People of the Waters, we're talking about the past. You know, we're talking about from the Ice Age to the fur trade. So we're talking about these indigenous communities in past tense. So we thought it would be really important when we created this exhibition to remind people that they're living cultures, that they're thriving, creative communities. And so we have a living cultures part of that exhibition that don't show the indigenous communities in their regalia only. They're teachers, they are soccer players, they are, and they, you know, go to powwows and perform, and you know, we really wanted to capture it in its diverse picture, and not just that one image of that you would see historically, and you know, really misrepresents, I think, the totality of what these communities are and what they contribute to our history. So within that exhibition, in addition to showing, a variety of imagery and showing where different community reservations are in the state of Wisconsin, we have a rotating exhibition featuring a Native American contemporary artist. So we do that each year. So currently, which aligns really well with what's going on at the Payne, we have a Ho-Chunk Black Ash basket maker. Kim Crowley is featured. And we just had her workshop about a week and a half ago and was sold out. She's just wonderful. We are currently talking with another artist, and we'll probably swap out that display and feature another artist later this spring, early summer. We're working out the details. So, and even that is a very intentional process. And I think when you were going on your tour with your partner, even the process of changing that out, we never want that display to be empty, because we think that sends a really negative message that it's vacant, it's empty. So we turn it all over in one day so it's never empty. It never is, seen empty. So we try to be as intentional as possible. We also record an interview with the artist so they can talk about their art from their own voice, not just us saying this is what their art is and us doing the interpretation. So we're trying to be really thoughtful and intentional with how we're displaying these works. So that's another ongoing component that we have of that exhibition, and it's really popular, and it's amazing to see so many different artworks and mediums each year. So it's a lot of fun. So it always gives you something new to see in an exhibition that's going to be around for a while. When it comes to programming, I know my colleague Ann Schaefer was here several weeks ago to talk about the Bridging Past to Present series, which featured a panel. Our kickoff panel was really well received. We sold out with registration of over 500 people, and between 300 and 350 showed up at the convention center. So it was really well received. And then we are having workshops like Kim Crowley's workshop, other panels. One that's upcoming I'm really excited about is by Karen Ann Hoffman, who was recently named an Oneida Living Treasure. And that will be on cultural appreciation versus appropriation. And then we'll have additional workshops with different Native American contemporary artists. So it's been so well received that we're currently planning on applying for a kind of a part 2. So stay tuned. We're really hoping that we're able to secure funding to continue with this program series, since it's been so well received and there's such an interest behind exposure and interaction with Native American cultures. Sort of pivoting from programming and exhibitions, kind of behind the scenes, I talked a lot about NAGPRA, but also within all of our other collections, historic collections, we're also trying to identify gaps in our collections for underrepresented stories, or even mining the collection. We had a painting in our collection that was donated by a Sawyer family member, and it was from a groundbreaking LGBTQ artist, Violet Oakley, who was really well known, and that story was never told. And it was great to do more research on collections we already have to enhance her story, and pay bigger tribute to her story. So we are also paying attention to whose story of the community, because our mission is very broad to represent the history and cultures of the Lake Winnebago region. And so there are so many stories that we haven't acquired and stewarded. So we're trying to pay attention to whose stories are we missing of the community, because we want to represent the community holistically. We value all of those stories. It's this wonderful tapestry of stories that we want to make sure we have as much of it represented as possible. And then we continue to recognize, celebrate, and pay tribute to the diverse cultural heritage of the community through social media posts, publications, exhibitions, programs, or other initiatives. So whether it's recognizing, Black History Month or Women's History, International Women's History Day, as well as a variety of religious observances or, historic events like the suffrage movement, social movements. Those are all things that we continuously do. So we're excited so next year is the nation's 250th anniversary. So part of us wanting to apply for that phase 2 or part 2 of that program series is, well, we're talking about the nation's history and its birthday, but we should talk about its First Nations too. And then we're planning to exhibit a collection from Lewis Hine, who was big for the child labor rights movement, and he's in Oshkosh. He was born here in Oshkosh, famous photographer, but we have a lot of his personal collection. His photographs are worldwide, so the photographs of like the workers on the Empire State Building, those were him, but he was pivotal in the labor rights movements, and so we have a lot of his personal collection, so we're excited to tell that story next year during the nation's 250th too. So those are a variety of things that we're working on. So we're busy, busy behind the scenes, busy in front of the scenes, but always endeavoring to really preserve and make accessible the cultural legacy and heritage here in the Lake Winnebago region. So, questions? No.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, I mean, Anna's been here in the past, but it's been a couple of years. So we occasionally invite her in to tell us all of the great things that are happening at the museum. And there's always new and more stuff every time she comes. So we really appreciate her being part of our meeting today.
Yeah.
It's great to know that the Oshkosh Public Museum is focused on having intent with what you're doing and care and sensitivity. I can't speak for every Indigenous person, but myself, it's heartwarming to hear that the ritualistic care that is still going into that. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I've also told several people this, but being able to take a tour with Anna, and I'm sure you don't have the time to do it for everybody, but watching somebody give a tour and explain the things that they care deeply about is one of the funnest things to ever do.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a museum nerd, but to watch you nerd out about it made me nerd out about it.
Yeah. And I have my bachelor's is in anthropology, cultural anthropology, and I can tell that you very much love your job, and
I do.
It shows.
Yeah, I do. But so does everyone else there. That's the great thing about working at the museum and working with the staff we have is everybody cares and is passionate, so passionate about this work and striving to serve the entire community and make the museum welcoming and a place that even if we're telling a story that could be complete on the surface level feels completely different from your own, you might find some parallel, so there's a way to connect, even if you're not Indigenous or if you're not, if the story seems different than yours, you can still find a way to connect. So there's so much of our shared history that we can connect on that I think that's important that people see themselves in the work we do. So, but we're all very passionate about that work. I've been known to give a long tour as well. I'm a little long-winded and chatty about it, but it's work that we care deeply about, and we all are very honored to be able to do that for the citizens, and we don't take for granted that we are supported by the community. This is a community museum, and so when we hear that we know we're doing the right thing, and we're advancing the mission and doing the work that we do to uphold the public's trust. So, if you ever catch me in a hallway, though, I will give you an impromptu tour. I've given many. Some people have been late.
Yeah, no,
So
I'm not
some
hiking
people
down
have
now.
literally like, I have to go catch a plane, and I'm like, I'll walk you out. And so keep going. So we
And then she'll walk you through security.
Yeah, exactly. So, so if you do catch me in the hallway, you might get a tour anyways, so.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank
Or
you.
if she catches you.
Yes, I will. I'll be like, I know you.
Well, we're very lucky to have this in our city. It's an
Yes.
amazing
Absolutely. Yes.
resource and
That's great.
Yeah,
educational place, and it's fantastic.
yeah.
And like you said, the ability for the elementary school kids especially to be able to go visit
Yeah.
and have their education continue outside of their classroom in a community asset like that is amazing.
It's like the Wisconsin idea. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. I love it.
And we're striving to make the museum as accessible as possible. So with OASD field trips are free, which is a great thing to offer. We are also trying to keep our museum affordable too. We're also piloting some programs too. I know there are programs out there, I think it's called like Museums for All, where you can, you have to provide information like your SNAP benefits and to get discounts, and I feel differently about that. I want people from different economic backgrounds, and I say but I feel like the museum, we want people from different economic backgrounds to feel just as welcome. So we piloted a program with a couple of local libraries where they can purchase a membership and it can be checked out. And so we're gathering data on that. But again, it's a way for a family or a person or someone who has different economic means can come to the museum and with dignity and have that be accessible. So we're trying to find ways to make the museum as accessible as possible. Again, the community is so generous with its support of the museum that we're trying to, trying to lessen as many roadblocks as possible. We still have revenue goals, but again, accessibility is a big deal to us. So we're piloting a couple of programs. So it's not just culturally, it's economic backgrounds too, trying to figure out ways that we can make sure people have that access to history and learning and so yeah. Stay tuned. That's wonderful. Maybe my next visit I'll have some data.
And we'll have all taken a tour.
I love data.
To talk about, how we're trying to meet people where they are economically as well.
That's great.
I love the idea of the checking out from the
Yeah.
library.
Yeah.
That's
great.
cool.
That's
Because then it
amazing.
also gets people in the library too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
I've seen you and Daryl talking, and this is
Yes. I was actually going to mention it to him today, and I forgot.
Well, now you.
And now I have. I'll see him tomorrow.
sounds good.
I'll see him tomorrow. Now it's going to be right in there. Anything else?
All right.
Thank you all so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Anna, you're welcome to stay or you're welcome to head out. We just have a few more agenda items.
We do have our community roundtable next if anyone has any activities or events related to DEI coming up.
Yeah, winter's pretty slow.
Yeah.
I did take a look earlier to see if there were any upcoming events that I saw, and I'm not seeing anything right now.
So one series that I would mention is April is Earth Month. And the university sponsors Earth Month events that include social justice because sustainability includes community and justice. So they have, for example, the free school is on April 5th in Sage Hall. And so that's from 1 till 5 p.m. That's probably the first coming up, but then they also have a series of lectures. In particular, on Tuesday, April 8th, there is an all-day climate justice teach-in Sage Hall, and so they have a number, particularly of social justice-oriented topics that are covered on that day. So those are kind of the two biggest, I would say, DEI-related, but certainly the environment is related to DEI. So.
And where did you say this was at?
That's at the university. Sage Hall is on High Avenue. The big new building.
Know that UW Oshkosh is having their drag show on April 11th.
Yes.
I believe that's also at the City Hall, but I don't
Is
want
it? I thought
to
it
speak
was
out
a
of turn.
brief, but-
I'm in it, so I should know.
I mean, it's in your calendar, right?
Yeah.
When I was taking a peek looking for anything DEI related, I don't know if this would necessarily be considered, but I feel like it could. Planet Perk on Tuesdays has their literacy days. I think you can get entered, I should look for sure, you can get entered into a drawing every time you go there and read a book.
Yeah, we've definitely shared that in the
Yeah.
past.
Okay.
Cool.
but-
So yeah, every Tuesday is that.
That's fun.
And where you said this was at?
Planet Perk.
Okay.
And then do we have any future items to review for the council's agenda?
The city council agenda is actually really light this time on DEI really. We got that last last meeting, but I didn't.
And I didn't officially tell this group that the sponsorship for Pride Fest was approved.
Yep.
Many of you probably already saw it, but that was at the meeting last month. Or actually earlier this month.
Yeah,
I guess it was 2 weeks ago.
Yep. And although council hasn't taken formal action on it yet, there is some steps moving forward in the realm of a tenant landlord resource center and coordinator for emergency shelter. We're working on some things.
Awesome.
So it's not ready yet to come to full council, but a couple council people are taking some actions.
Cool.
All right, and then for future agenda items, next month in April, we have the one about Winnebago County overdose fatality review with Jennifer Skolaski. I'm pretty excited about that one.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her.
And then a reminder that May's meeting is canceled. And then I think that's all we got. Do we
If anybody, again, has any future agenda items, they can talk about them now, or they can send them to myself and the chair. I do try to get a draft agenda done about 2 weeks ahead of time. So if you do have anything that you leave here and you go, oh, I should have said, feel free to reach out to us about that. And so we don't have to talk about them now, but something to, doesn't have to be in the meeting, but if you do have any agenda items, let us know.
I do know Oshkosh is supposed to be holding, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 Juneteenth events. So
Yeah, I'm not certain when any of our
Yeah.
Oshkosh official Juneteenth events are happening, but there are normally a few hosted by many of the
Yeah.
local entities coming up. So I'm sure we'll hear more about those. Hopefully we'll have some of those on the calendar by our April meeting.
So I just texted and I got permission to bring up SAPO Oshkosh. They have a new SAPO center here in town.
Cool.
And I asked if they would accept an invite to come and talk about the work that they're doing for Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people. So I will forward you their contact information so you can get out to. And I know that she's watching right now, so hi.
Wonderful. Maybe they'd be available for like a June-ish meeting. No,
I'm guessing that we could try to make that work.
All right, does anybody else have anything? Okay, and then do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.